Hello. How's everyone?
Great.
That's good. So this topic here is one of my favorite topics, just to talk about the path to purpose. And I'm gonna go deep into my story and just kind of give everyone some insight on where I was mentally going through my ordeal, how I pulled myself out of that, and then how I continue to use some of the things that I learned back then to continue to motivate myself. So as Van Brooks, I'm from West Baltimore City, born and raised. I actually still live in the community where I opened up my foundation. But back in my younger days, when I was at Loyola, I was a three-sport athlete: football, basketball, and lacrosse. And I started to really excel at football. Football is my passion. And like a lot of kids from my community, that was going to be the way that I made it out, my community, and put my family on a pedestal to be successful generations to come. And I always knew and understood how football could change my life, but I wasn't expecting to change my life the way that it did. And so going in for a routine tackle, as Rob said, I was 16, my junior year in high school. Crazy, I had broken my hand earlier in that summer, so I was out for a couple games. I couldn't play. I had a cast in my hand. Finally, they said that I could wrap my hand and play with the cast. So then the day that I got the cast off was the day that I ended up breaking my neck. And so, still remember it to this day, going in for a routine tackle, something that I've done thousands of times since I started playing football at S.A.F.E. And when I tackled the guy, I knew something had broken, because to that point I had broken about 10 bones. So I knew something had broken, wasn't quite sure what though. And so as I was laying there, I was telling myself, okay, get up. And I always had this rule that no matter how bad I was hurt, I would always walk off the field, no matter what. That was a rule. I don't care if you had to, someone had to hold me up, I wanted to walk off. And so that's what I was expecting that I was going to do. And so how many people here has had like a body part fall asleep, that tingling feeling that you get? So that's how my entire body felt. And so as I lay there, a teammate of mine came over and she tried to pull me up. And when I saw him yank, but I was still laying on my back. And the panic that was in his face, it's kind of like, okay, what's wrong here? And then it felt as though I started levitating. So I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Why can't I get up and why can't I move? Something's in my mind. So please don't mind me, keep rubbing it. So as I'm laying there, I said, okay, time goes past, at least it seemed like a lot of time went past, but it was probably a couple seconds. And then I can see the trainer standing over top of me, and he's asking me, do I feel different things, which I don't feel anything at all. And so I hear my mother. Now the funny story about my mother being on the field was, back when I was in Pop Warner, it was her first game coming to watch me play. And I was the running back, I got tackled, and I was at the bottom of the pile, was probably 5 or 6 people on top of it. And I hear my mother saying, get off my son, right? But now I'm saying, hey, this voice is really close to me because the stands are, a little bit away. But I hear, get off my son, and the pile's getting lighter and lighter. And when I look up, it's my mother pulling people off. So now that I'm laying on the field, I'm saying, okay, I know my mother's not back on the field trying to do the same thing. But this time it was different. I can hear her crying. And so naturally, you hear your mother crying, you're like, okay, what's going on? And then the paramedics came, and I overheard one of them say he broke his neck. And so what does that mean? I'm 16, when you break your neck, you die, right? That's just what I thought. And I said, well, that can't be true because I'm still here. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. And shortly after the helicopter came, they did everything they needed to do, cut my helmet and all that stuff off, strapped me to the board, and then flew me to shock trauma. And when I arrived at shock trauma, I passed out. And so when I woke up unable to do anything. I couldn't talk. I was connected to machines, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. And of course I couldn't move. And the doctors had told my parents that I was paralyzed from the neck down. They went on to say, he's going to be like that for the rest of his life, so y'all need to start making accommodations for him. And at that time, again, 16 years old, it's, what does this even mean? I went from being a three-sport athlete, getting recruited by colleges, to now they're saying that I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. And so it was tough to deal with because it was everything that I was working for was instantly taken away. I mean, instantly taken away. And my father had this saying, he used to always tell me, Van, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Because what happens if you don't make it playing sports? And being 16 years old, and I took very good care of my body, I would flex on him. You see this? Nothing's going to happen, right? Nothing's going to happen. And he always would say, well, what if? What if? And I said, I don't think like that. That's how you think. I don't think like that. Nothing's going to happen. And so that was one of the first things that popped into my mind was, what am I going to do now? Because everything that I work for has been taken away. So what am I going to do? And my dad is he's a very direct person to the point, and in so many words, he said, I told you so, right? And so that's completely difficult to hear that. And my mother was there. My mother was the person that came in and she gave me the love, and my father was the tough love person. And so hearing everything that was being said, it put me into, now I identify as depression, of course. What do you mean I can't move, right? What does that even mean? And it took some time for me to really to take that in. And so they hit a point in the hospital where every night they would have to come in and someone would roll me side to side and do the procedures to make sure that my lungs were being cleared and all of that. And it got unbearable. But the physical aspect of it wasn't a problem. As I said, I had broken a ton of bones, so I wasn't worried about the physical aspect of things. It was the mental part that I started getting to. Because one of my parents always had to stay at the hospital with me. I had an incident where there was a gentleman beside me in a similar situation. His name was Dan, my name was Van. The nurse came in the wrong room that night, took me off the ventilator when he was supposed to be getting the treatment, and so a lot of chaos just kind of happened. And so ever since that, one of my parents made sure to stay with me in the hospital. And my dad's a tough guy. He doesn't show any emotions. My mother, I can tell she'd been up all night crying, and after a while that took its toll. And so I told myself that I no longer wanted to do this. Now this is when I realized how powerful the mind really is. Despite being physically not able to move, telling myself that I no longer want to do this and give up, I almost was successful at that. When I woke up, things was really bad, and it was as if my father knew what I did. And he came in, he expressed his frustrations, and him being so frustrated, he left. And I didn't know where he went. I actually just found out where he went maybe 6 months ago. He went to the bathroom. And he said when he went to the bathroom was clean. I mean, it was nothing anywhere. It was a beautiful bathroom. And he said he went in one of the stalls and sat down just to clear his mind. He closed the door. And on the back of the door it said, a man is defeated when he loses, he's defeated when he gives up. He said he jumped up, he came running to the room, and that's what he told me. He said, Van, he told me a couple of things. He said, Van, a man is defeated when he loses, he's defeated when he gives up. He then said, I'm going to do my part, God's going to do his part, you need to do your part. And then he said, I'm depending on you. And so my father's the strongest person I know. Back then he was, today he still is. And so for my father to say he's depending on me, I had to accept that challenge. And I told myself that I would never try to give up on life ever again. And I was going to make the best out of it. And my father also presented me with my options. One was you deal with it, the other one you don't. He had a saying, if you want to be a bum, don't do anything. It's easy to be a bum. And so I made my mind up that, whatever was going to happen, I was going to deal with it that day and I was going to get through it. And so I started fighting, and I made enough progress to leave shock trauma. And I was in shock trauma for about 2 months. And then I went to another therapy facility. And that's when I started talking and being able to eat again. Now, during that time, I went to private schools, Catholic schools all my life. And my faith was there, but in the hospital, my faith disappeared. I no longer had faith. When someone would say, we are going to pray for you, I don't pray for you. I don't want it. When someone says, you should pray, for what? I'm not praying. And the reason being was because the question I always had was, why me? Right? I was a good kid, for the most part. I was doing my academics. I was doing everything that I needed to do. So why me? And I couldn't quite understand, why I was going through what I was going through, why my family was going through. Pretty much, why were we suffering, right? And so faith was non-existent. And as the years went on, I set out to accomplish everything that they said I wasn't going to be able to accomplish. So when they came in and said, you'll never walk again, I said, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to walk again. When they said, you're not going to be able to graduate on time for class, I'll prove you wrong. You're not going to be able to go to college, I'll prove you wrong. And so once I was able to talk, I started taking classes in the hospital. When I came home, I started taking classes, and then I actually started driving myself back to school my senior year. So I missed my entire junior year. I made it up that summer when I came home. Graduated on time for my class that senior year. So the next thing was, okay, college. Did the same thing. I went on and I graduated from college. But all this time I was still doing intense therapy. And after a while, the weight of the naysayers started getting to me. Why are you still doing therapy? It's been 8 years, you're not getting anything back. Now at this point, I was independent, so I was okay, and I was going to school, I had a full day, and I wanted to give up on therapy. But as an athlete, you get into a routine, and once you have a routine, it's very hard to break it. And so I got up this morning, I said I wasn't going to go to therapy, but I ended up getting dressed, ended up in the car. The entire time I'm driving to therapy, I'm saying, I'm not going. I arrived in the parking lot, I'm here now, I'm not going back home, so I might as well. I went up, and usually when I go in, I'm joking, I'm playing around, because that's just the best way for me to get through what I'm about to put myself through in therapy. And so I told them that I wanted to try to walk. And, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no, I'm serious, I want to try to walk. If you don't let me try to walk, I'm signing out, I'm never coming back. So my therapist said, let's try. And so at the end of that session, she said, congratulations, you took 3 steps on your own. Now, what does it look like? It's a harness that hangs from the ceiling. I'm harnessed up, and I'm on a walker. And so she's sitting in front of me on a stool. So as I'm pushing the walker forward, she's pulling my legs for me. And she said, you took 3 steps on your own. I didn't believe it, so I said, okay, I'll be back tomorrow. Next day, she said, you took 5. Still don't believe it, we'll come back tomorrow. Now this time I said, don't touch me at all, just let me hang from the ceiling, and if I'm really walking, I'll be able to take some steps. And I was able to take the steps. And so, leaving, got in the car, cried like a baby, but it hit me in that moment why I was going through everything that I was going through. And I was being prepared for something much larger than myself. And it took my injury to sit me down, to say, this is how your life's going to go, and I need you to get on board with this. And your life's not going to change until you get on board with what I want you to do. And so, thinking back on it, I grew up in West Baltimore because it's a great community that I live in, that I come from. And it was going to teach me everything I needed to know to navigate through Baltimore City. I went to the private schools because it was going to give me the education that I would need to be successful when my physical ability was taken away from me. It also gave me the network that would eventually be my backbone in everything that I do. Athletics. Being an athlete has taught me what it truly means to love something, what it truly means to put hard work and dedication into something, and to overcome whatever obstacles being put in front of me. And then my faith actually started coming back because I felt that there was a void, and I didn't quite know what that void was, and it was my faith that was missing. And so like when all that came back, I woke up from a dream that said start a nonprofit. I had no prior knowledge of a nonprofit whatsoever. Just graduated from college and turned to my best friend Google. And Google told me everything I needed to know to start a nonprofit. And so for about 6 to 8 months, I studied how to start a nonprofit. I called people, and I launched a nonprofit, and Safe Alternative Foundation for Education. And so the mission is to teach kids the importance of having an education, the importance of having a backup plan for life. But more importantly, is to show them that no matter what your zip code is, no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from, do not let your circumstances define who you are and where you can go. I could have easily sat in a wheelchair and asked for a pity party. My dad wasn't going to have it. Could have got away with it probably with my mother for a little bit. You know? Probably could have got away with my mother, but my dad definitely wasn't having it. And so for me, it was being pushed. And so finding your path of purpose, right? As I said, I had to be put in this chair for me to get to that point. I always say that God will use your brokenness, not for you, but He'll use your brokenness to help others. And I look at that and say, you know, I can't be upset because I'm just a vessel here to do His work. And so when I started looking at life that way, nothing bothers me because it's bigger than me. And so finding your path of purpose, why I really like that is because a lot of times people have a very difficult time with finding their path or understanding what it is. And I always like to say it's right in front of you. You just have to listen. You have to be still. I had a lot of time to be still, right? Literally, I had time to be still and be in my head and you know, being broken the way that I was broken, it was difficult, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. And the reason I wouldn't change it is because it helped me find my purpose. And my purpose is to help others. And growing up and going to Loyola, the mission of Loyola is very simple. Man for others. And there's a prayer that we say, and it's the St. Ignatius prayer. Lord, teach me to be generous, teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to ask for a reward, except that of knowing I'm doing your will. Said it a lot. I never understood what it meant until I was in a wheelchair. I never understood what any of those things meant. And it's simple. It's not about you. I don't know what people may be going through, right? We all have our own stories. We all have our struggles. You're struggling because you're being prepared for something. You're struggling because you're being prepared for something. And you have to go through it. And it's a testimony that you're being given to share with others. To share with others. That's why when Rob reached out saying, hey, would you like to come and speak? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a Sunday, I don't care. I'm going to be there because it's not about me. It's not about me. And one of the things I love, one of my scriptures, is the parable of talents. Does anyone know about the parable of talents? Parable of talents, I'm going to paraphrase crazy. God gave 3 men talents. One had 1, 5, and 10. And God told them to go out and do what they're going to do with the talents. The person with 5, the person with 10, they went out and they spread their talents around. The person with 1 buried it. When God came back, hey, what did you do with the talents that I gave you? The person with 10, I spent them. Okay, congratulations, here's more. The person with 5, I spent them. Congratulations, here's more. The person with 1, I buried it. Why did you bury the talent that I gave you? Because I was afraid that I was going to lose it. Well, you didn't do what I wanted you to do with that talent. I gave you the talent to share with others. He took that talent and gave it to someone else. Right? So for me, is we are given stories, we are given talents that are to be shared. A gift. What is a gift? Someone tell me what a gift. What do you do with a gift? What do you do?
Give it. Unwrap it.
You unwrap it. Your gifts are to be given away. They aren't for you to keep. They are not for you to keep. Whatever you're going through, someone can benefit from it. And it may take a lot to be vulnerable, because since I was 16, my life has been displayed in the media. There's not much private life that I have. It's really not. But it's a gift. is a testimony that you have to be given away and that you should share it. So in finding your path to purpose and overcoming obstacles, there are some steps that I created. And the first thing is you must identify what it is that you're going through. Because the only way that you'll be able to address it or to get over it is you have to identify it first. And you have to understand what it means. I always say, you determine what external factors mean to you. You determine what those things mean to you. I'm in a wheelchair. You know, I posted a post up yesterday of a picture. It's from my waist down. And when I showed it to someone, the first thing they said was, looking at that picture, someone would say you're a half of a man. Because I'm paralyzed and I can only use my upper body. I've been able to accomplish way more sitting in this chair than I probably ever would have walking. Way more. And I'm confident in saying that. Because again, this chair has taught me so many lessons. Going through adversity, when you go through adversity, it's to strengthen you. It's not to break you. It's to strengthen you. You're being prepared for something much larger than yourself. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my story. And I want to kind of stop here because I actually want to answer questions, if there are any. And then if not, I'll continue to talk about a few other things that are very, you know, heavy on my heart that I will share.
All right. How's your family like today? Are your parents doing fine? Are your siblings doing okay today?
They are. Everyone's doing very well, and I think for them it was great. They for years they wouldn't travel. Now I know where they are.
That's good. I mean, I commend your family for sticking together through that. I mean, I think a lot of families would have been torn apart by something like that. So, I mean, I commend you for that. Thanks.
But you know what my dad said. I'm doing a documentary with the organization, and so they interviewed my dad, and he said that question came up: how did they deal with it? And he said the way that they dealt with it was whatever it took that day, that's what they were going to do. They weren't going to worry about tomorrow. They weren't going to worry about yesterday. Whatever was called for that day is what they were going to do to get through to the next day. And they continued to do that over the years until things eventually turned on.
Are you married, man?
I'm not.
No?
No.
Never been in love?
Have I ever been in love?
Yeah.
I have in football. But no, I have.
You see yourself married one day?
I do.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I do.
I'm not going to ask you that.
You saw how quick I tried to switch off of that.
Stick with the football. So I heard you talk about why pray, why bother, and then I heard you make reference to His will, His purpose,
Yes.
and your scripture. So did I miss the gap on where that transformation took place for you personally?
So it came back after I took those steps. That's when it came back. When I was driving home,
Oh, the
reflecting.
physical steps in the harness?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
When I was driving home, reflecting on, I mean, literally it's like a quick flash of my life up until that point. And in that it was, this is why I was going through what I was going through. And then that void that I was feeling came from not having my faith there. And so that's what made me start to seek out my faith again.
Thank you.
Do you find yourself, just reflecting on when it first happened? And a lot of people, including myself, when we go through, tragic incidents, and we always say, why me, why me? Do you find yourself now saying, why not? Like God used you for some reason?
Mm-hmm. So at some point, we hit a turning point when my dad said, why not you? You're no exception. Up until that point, I'm a good kid. I'm a good athlete. I'm making as if I'm better than other people. And so the reality of it was I'm no exception. And so once he put that into perspective for me and saying, you know, you're no exception to what happens to people, you just have to deal with it. That changed the, you know, why me to why not me. And then now understanding why, I'll never ask that question ever again. Yes.
What is Safe Center?
So the S.A.F.E Center is my foundation. So I started S.A.F.E Alternative in 2012. I opened the S.A.F.E Center in 2015, and it's an after-school program, and what after-school facilities, youth center. And so the whole purpose of that was, when I was injured, they had an event. About 1,300 people came to support me, and I don't know that many people. Till this day, I still meet people that say, "Hey, I was there on that day." And I'm just like, you know, thanks for your support, but I don't know that many people. But one of the things that I've learned is you pay it forward. When someone help you, you pay it forward. And so when those people came and helped my family at our worst time, for me it was, I'm going to pay it forward. And I had the opportunities, I had the resources, I had the network to provide other opportunities to kids that don't have them. So early, and I'm giving you the long story, I'm going to give you the backstory too. So early on, while at Loyola, I'm the youngest of 5. I'm the only one in a private school. And so I noticed the difference between the education that I was receiving compared to that of my siblings and my friends and my family. I also noticed the opportunities and the resources that I had. And so when I was injured, 2 things happened. One, I truly understood why having an education was important, because no matter what my physical ability was, as long as I had my education, I would be okay, because I can tell somebody how to do something, or I can explain that to them. The other thing was the things I was exposed to and I experienced. So now, fast forward into my center, it was, I had this center. I am not a fan of Baltimore City public school systems. How can I bring a private school education after school? How can I give the kids in my community the resources and opportunities that I had? And so that's what we do there. We teach them the importance of having an education, as to how and why what they're learning in the classroom, why it's important, and how it applies to the real world. We also have a vocation approach. So we'll just use math, learning fractions. You know, most kids say, I just need to know dollars and cents. I agree with them. I was one of them. Dollars and cents, that's all I need to know. But when it comes to fractions, we use fractions every day, we just don't realize it. So for us, we tell the kids, so this is why learning fractions are important. And we take them to wood shop. Now at wood shop, they're learning how to make a project. They're making a project that they can leave and say they made. They're learning a skill, but it's also showing them why math is important. And so now they can see the connection. This is important in the classroom because I can use this around the house when the door breaks, or I have to cut something, or I have to build something. And so that's what we do with all of our programs, making those connections, but also giving them insight to those potential career paths if they want to pursue those.
Or you order a pizza.
Where?
Or if you order a pizza and somebody says, I get 2 slices, that's 25% of the pizza.
Yeah. So funny story, we had baking. One of our programs we did was baking. So we feed all our kids before they leave. And so they wanted pancakes for dinner. And so we say, okay, we gave them the instructions and all the ingredients, and they did their things. Pancakes came out. They could have been on an IHOP commercial. They would look gorgeous. And so everyone got their pancakes, and someone ate it, and just the look on her face was just like, oh, something's not right here. Not right. And so they put baking powder, so bake powder. They put entirely too much because they used the wrong. Well, one, they were playing around, not paying attention. That was the problem. But they used the wrong cup to put it in, so they couldn't eat it. And so they're joking and playing. Now, the seriousness kicked in when I told them, because some of my kids don't eat when they leave, so we're the last meal that they'll get until they sometimes come back to us the next day. And so they were joking and playing until I said, well, I don't have food for y'all now, because that's what we were eating for dinner. Of course we have food for them, but I wanted to push the issue of, this is why it's important that you learn math, your fractions. This is why it's important that you listen to what we're trying to teach. This is the result of not doing those things. Now no one can eat because we have to no, we're going to eat it. No, it's not. We're going to throw it away. And of course, we fed them, but that was the message that we were sending them. And so that was in your face, firsthand, this is why math is important.
Is there a curriculum to your after-school program, and what are the age groups and how many are in the center?
So middle school, so 11 through 14, we have 20 right now. Curriculum, not really. We do a lot of things on the fly, just because we run about 25 to 30 different programs just on the academic year, and we allow the students to pick those. So sometimes it's just a matter of if they come in and say they want to do fencing, we have to, in a matter of a couple of weeks, get fencing together, but then also come up with a lesson plan for those 6 weeks. So sometimes it is very difficult for us to have a curriculum on programs like that. But as far as just the academic, like the regular academic things, yes, we do a lot of work with getting curriculum from Loyola.
So how do you keep yourself motivated with when certain students just aren't like?
How do I keep myself motivated?
Yeah, like how do you keep yourself focused to help get them to where they should be, where they could be?
Because I understand that some decisions are life and death. And if I'm not on I can't afford to have a down day, an off day. I just can't afford that because I have 20 kids that depend on the decisions that I make every day. And so my motivation comes really through them, of how can I continue to be better for them. And I don't have kids. They are my kids, so it's always how can I be better for them? Because sometimes I'm daddy, sometimes I'm mommy, sometimes I'm grandpa, sometimes I'm big brother. You know, sometimes I'm just the ear that they need, the shoulder. So I always have to be on my game for them. So that's what keeps me motivated.
Just to build up of that, so what do you do to de-stress, or what do you do for fun to kind of get yourself away from things and get recharged? How do you get energized yourself if every day is so important, which I can see it is?
So what I've done is I try to take a vacation every once in a while. I actually just came back from Colorado for a week skiing, but still was working there, you know, in between. But just things like that. I did adaptive skiing. Yeah. Really cool.
Awesome. We're going next Saturday.
I've already been gone for a week.
Yeah, first of all, your story is very inspirational. We really appreciate you coming and sharing your heart, man. Thank you. I'm concerned about Baltimore and kind of, you know, I know that you're a part of the Baltimore City and in the nonprofit sector in the area of serving. Like, do you see that serving's growing in Baltimore? Do you see a climate? Do you see more energy putting towards, you know, government funding within, seeing a change? Because it sounds like you're right in the middle of a lot of that. Do you see anything on the uprise? Do you hear, see? Can you share a little bit?
So when it comes to philanthropy and giving, Maryland is ranked 14 right now of the nation. When it comes to service and volunteerism and AmeriCorps, Maryland is number 10. Baltimore City is number 1. So people are definitely serving. Why I'm so passionate about serving is because I'm a firm believer that everyone in this room has a gift, everyone in this room has a talent. If we got together and we volunteered our time towards an issue, we can solve that without anyone coming to the rescue. We can do that ourselves. And for me, I see that because when I started the S.A.F.E Center, when I opened that up, I was a one-man show for about 3 years. But I relied on volunteers. So when I bought that building that I now have, I called people. Anybody who had hands and feet that were willing to come in and help me refurbish that, they came. And so it was through volunteers that we got that open. Then again, being in the nonprofit world, we rely on volunteers and we rely on individual donations. So when people step up, things like the S.A.F.E Center can happen. And so the more we step up, the better things will be and the more issues that we can solve. So definitely, it's definitely growing. And in the next year, there are going to be some other things that are going to be coming out that'll help with getting people involved.
What kind of things, like technical apps or anything like that?
Yes.
We'll memorize it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Where is your SAFE Center located?
So it's in Franklin Square. So it's, I think it took about 20 minutes to get here. Just on the other side of Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Not too far from the stadiums. So maybe 5 minutes from the stadiums. And I can give you the exact address.
Is there anything you need there? I mean, you know,
Volunteers.
we're all volunteers here. So.
Volunteers. We're always looking for different things to expose the kids to. We also, whatever your expertise are, whatever your passions or hobbies are that you would like to bring, we invite that. We want that. We do not have volunteers come in just for the sake of having bodies. We want it's a transformational experience for everyone involved. Our kids are going to be transformed by the skills that you bring in, but we also hope that you'll be transformed by being able to provide those opportunities to the kids that you're working with. So we cater our volunteering experience to the individual.
Can we find you on the internet?
Find me on the internet. That would be the easiest way to find me. Yes.
How did you find those 20 boys? Like, how did they come to you? How
So-
did you get 20?
So we have boys and girls. It comes from word of mouth, comes from being in the community, but then we also partner with 2 schools. So we'll go into schools. Right now, 20 is pretty much our capacity because the space isn't that big. But I just purchased some other properties that I'm going to be starting to work on to open up another center soon. So hopefully by mid-2020, I'll have that open.
So thinking about these 20, and
Yes.
like, is there what's the buy-in for them besides they have a place to go after school that's safe, get off the street or out of their home where there's issues? Like, what's the accountability for them? Is it behavioral? Like, are they required to then at some point use their gifts and talents to go out and volunteer and give back and pay it forward? I mean, I understand that they're young, but what's in place for that transformation?
So it is, in our programming, we do have volunteer experiences, so we'll go out and volunteer somewhere to get them involved. Another thing is once they graduate, we always ask them to come back and share their experiences with our younger kids as they go through the program. But the way that we've structured it, if a student stays with us over a month, the chances of them leaving are very slim. It's usually within that month that kids will say, this isn't for us. Once you hit that 2-month mark, you're family. So you're not going anywhere. And so formally, we don't have anything really in place outside of just the love and support that we give that makes them want to be there. That's all we really can give. Everything else is just a bonus, helping them get into the schools that they want, giving them the experiences that they may not may not receive anywhere else. Those are just a bonus for them. But the main thing is really having someone they can call at 1 a.m. when something's going wrong and saying, hey, I need you to come get me. And knowing that we're going to be there for them no matter what.
Are they at risk? Some
I hate
of
that
them.
word.
I mean, I don't know how it's late, but are they in bad situations typically? And then you're kind of like providing.
Some have messed up situations. Some have excellent situations. Again, we're just a family trying to help. And the reason why I say I don't like at risk, I don't think they're at risk.
Right.
We live in a community that's underserved. And so when you live in a community that's underserved and you don't have opportunities and resources, you're always in survival mode. And so when you're always in survival mode, it's hard to focus on anything else. And so that's one of the things where I say, when I was growing up, I grew up in the same community, I never was at risk. I grew up with two parents in a household. I grew up having all of the things that I need. It was just the environment that I was in was underserved. That doesn't mean that I was, underserved.
I ask that because like living classrooms, our model is like, the kids that are at the top performing the best and they take down, but then there's like Fred, which is the opposite. They take the bottom, like 80% or whatever they could. The kids that like, just, very easily fall into a life of crime or whatever. So I wasn't sure if there was qualifications for them to get into your program, like, is it like the kids that are really excelling, or maybe the kids that aren't doing as good, or it's just anybody really, you're kind of just wide open to whoever wants to
Yes.
come? Okay.
We're open because one of the things, we like to do a lot of peer-to-peer teaching. So an example, just Thursday, we were doing some woodshop programs at the center. And so I taught one of the kids how to tie a knot, a certain kind of knot. And so once I taught him how to do it, the other kids came up to ask me to teach them. But I said, no, he's going to teach them how to do it. So he went around teaching everyone how to tie this. And so when you have a mix of the kids that are struggling and the kids that are excelling, then we can share that responsibility between the two. Because we have kids that are excelling that can help our kids and bring them up, but then we also have kids who have other things that they bring to the table that can help the kids that are excelling. One of the things I always say a lot of times is the very things that teachers and administrators dislike about children are the very things that help them survive when they leave out of school. So as a kid, it's hard to turn that off. So for us, it's how can we use that? I mean, it's transferable skills. How can we use that in an academic setting? And so one of the ways of doing that is by having that peer-to-peer relationship and mentorship. Any more questions? Yes.
How long has the center been around? Have you actually had anyone like go through the program, graduate, and come back to volunteer?
Yes. So the center, we just entered our 4th academic year. We have he's a senior now, and he comes back in when he can to help. We also have some kids that are in private school, and they come back and share their experiences. And it's really good for them because they come from our community. They live, a block, 2 blocks away from the center. So for them to say they've gone through the program, they've gone to private school, they're excelling and doing these great things, and like me, they are right from the community. Their story is way more powerful than my story will be at times because they know them. And so we do have our students that do come back and talk to them.
Awesome.
Mike, what's up?
What's up, bro?
How you feel? Any more? So the last thing I would like to say, and I'll go 2 things. One is no matter what you're going through, again, no matter what you're going through, it's meant to build you. It's not meant to break you. It's meant to build you up. And so you have to control your perspective on how you see things. If you see it as it being meant to break you, it's going to break you. If you see it as it being a stepping stone that's building you up for something much larger than yourself, that's exactly what's going to happen. And the last thing, I always like to end with everyone repeating the quote. So if we all can say it, we're going to say, a person isn't defeated when they lose. A person is defeated when they lose. They're defeated when they give up.
They're defeated when they give up.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to take a picture with Van? Grab a photo. Group picture? Just yourself. Can you give us numbers?